What I love about Ask the Handicapper is you get involved, and you are very much. Remember, you can do so studio@theraces.com. If you go onto Twitter, feel free to tweet me or Twitter at the races or at MC Yeehaw, but just put in the hashtag Ask the Handicapper, which makes them very easy to find. Tracy has been on. She says, why when horses fall at the last, Phil, when they should have won, do they get penalised? Surely this is unfair.
Well, I think Tracy's sort of half answered her question herself, when they would have won. And I think that's the key aspect to it. We have to give a handicap rating based on all of the evidence that we've got in front of us. And if we have a situation where a horse is clearly going to win at the last and falls at the last, then we have to take some action. Yes, it's disappointing for the connections because they haven't actually got the money and they haven't got the win. But realistically, we're trying to produce even and fair handicaps for the future. And if we didn't take that into consideration, if we just ignored that run, then clearly the next time that horse ran, it would be advantaged against all of the other horses it was running against. And we're all about trying to get fairness and equality every time a horse runs.
That's all very well, Phil, but if you're the owner of that horse, you're in absolute bits. Not only have you lost your prize money, but you've smashed them in the face as well by stuffing them up the handicap. Here's a question for you, which I don't know whether you have the statistics to hand, but you will have thought about it. How many horses who therefore win a handicap go on to win at their revised mark next time, compared to the horses that go and lose on their revised mark next time?
I don't quite understand the second part of the question.
Well, as in you get your revised mark, how many horses win 2 in a row, or how many win 1, and then when they run next off the revised mark, lose?
Okay.
So percentage-wise, how many win 2?
Well, percentage-wise, how many would win 2 on the trot? Probably about 12%.
So therefore, if you kept that horse who fell on his same rating, you've got an 88% chance that he might not win.
It's possible, yeah.
Well, that's a much higher percentage chance. It would suggest you should keep him on the same mark.
Well, but we have to not all of those horses will have won, right? So we put a horse up £10, some of them will win, some of them won't.
But if you've only got a 12% chance of winning off your revised mark, and I know that's a figure slightly plucked,
we're not comparing like with like, though, are we? We're not comparing like with like, clearly.
Well, what I'm saying is that on the basis it's more likely the horse will lose next time, why not give him the chance of winning again?
But on the basis of its likelihood is that every horse will lose next time more likely than not, because obviously you're running against 5, 6, 7, 8, 14,
so on that basis, give him another chance of his same mark. I think you've defeated your own argument.
No, I haven't, because we owe it to the horses that horse is going to run against next time to take that into consideration. We can't just ignore what we've seen. And if the reality is that horse has shown us that it deserves to be on a higher mark, we have to take some action. We absolutely do. Because we owe it to the 8, 10, 12, 14 horses that's going to run against next time to do something about it. Now,
why don't we put it to a public vote? Well, ask the trainers. I mean, you've got an 88% chance of losing or a 12% chance of winning. I think they take the 12.
Let's go back to the previous thing. The most important thing is to produce fair and equal handicaps every time horses run. That's our absolute maxim, and we have to do that. The one thing I would say is that a horse that falls, and if it disappoints on its next couple of runs, we'd be very quick to get it back, much quicker perhaps than if it had won the race, because there is an element of, well, we think that's what would have happened, we've surmised that's what would have happened, but you can't be absolutely 100% confident. So we would be a little bit more, I'm not sure leaning is the right word, proactive is probably the better word. We'd be more proactive in dropping that horse when it runs its next couple of races.
Okay, not convinced. Tony says, does Phil not think that older horses, 11 plus, should come down the handicap a bit quicker than they currently do?
Yes, and we have changed that in the last few years. They used to come down very, very slowly, and now my team are much more willing to drop 10, 11, 12-year-olds much faster than perhaps we were 4 or 5 years ago. So that is a good question, and it's in hand, and it has been taking place, and it will get more so.
We're going to go back to Don Cossack, which of course is what we're meant to be doing at this minute, but the questions are firing in. This one's from Richard. This is very much a personal question, Phil, so you have to very much consider how you're going to ask this, and your future as the chief. Ask Phil, has he ever unfairly handicapped a horse both too harshly and not enough weight? Have you ever got it wrong? Severely?
Well, never deliberately, But obviously...
Well, let's hope not, anyway.
Never deliberately, but obviously when you're assessing a horse, you have a certain amount of information at your disposal. Now, obviously, you know, subsequent events show that you often have races...
And in a way, you always get it wrong in some way.
Well, you often have races too high and too low. For example, if you have a situation where you've taken a view on a race and then the second, third, fourth, fifth all come out and won, then clearly you've got that race too low and the winner would have to go up collaterally. But vice versa, if the first and second and fourth and fifth come out and struggle and you think, well, that race is too high, that you would be dropping that race, then the third that actually hasn't run in that intermediate period would get dropped as well. So the answer to the question is, you don't get it wrong as such, you just make a judgment call based on the information you have at that point in time. As you get more information about the topic, then you change your mind.
To be fair, it is one of those jobs, isn't it? There is no right or wrong, unless you've got a handicap where everything dead heated,
yes.
In which case I think you could fairly say at the end of that handicap, I got it all right.
Yes.
Unless that scenario happens, it's always wrong.
It's always close to wrong. Yes, you're absolutely
it's always
right.
wrong, Phil, unless it's an absolute
but
dead heat.
it's all about interpretation. But there are some horses who run a certain way. There are some horses running a race, and it's not necessarily weight which is the be-all and end-all in a race. You know, we might have given a horse a very fair handicap mark, but for reasons nothing to do with weight, the horse can't perform. For example, it might be running over an incorrect trip, it might be running over the wrong ground, or it might just be an out-of-form horse for whatever reason, and we've dropped it, but it's still deteriorating. We haven't actually caught up with its deterioration yet. I mean, I remember last year dropping a horse something like £40 in 5 races, thinking, well, it's going to show it something in this race, and it still pulled up the next time.
This is not a question for our viewers, but it was something that I asked Peter Scudamore on Monday on the Line. A scenario, I sort of know the answer, but I think it could become interesting. Let's just say breathing operations became official. Okay, so let's take, for example, Bobsworth. Yeah? He runs in the Hennessy. He's got whatever mark you've given him after the Hennessy. What happens then if Nicky Henderson comes out and says he's got a severe breathing operation, we're going to operate on that next week? Would that, let's say you want to drop Bobsworth £5 for his Hennessy run, would that scenario mean you just drop him £5, he has the breathing operation and then he turns out to be chucked in by £25? Or if it became official, would it make you hold fire on dropping him the £5 on the basis that you know something medical is being done to him to try and make him better?
I don't think it's important for us, but I do think it's useful information for punters. So we have to make those decisions usually 48, 72 hours after the race, and we'll make those decisions whatever. So for example, taking Bobsworth, I've dropped him from 153 to 150.
Like he's going to be the best handicapped horse in the world one day.
Well, that's what everybody said in the lead up to last week, and it didn't work out, did it?
No, it didn't.
The thinking behind dropping him now to 150 is because of his age, he's now eligible to run in veterans chases.
Oh, Nicky's asked you to do that, hasn't he?
No.
He has. He said slip him to the veterans mark.
No, he hasn't. But it was interesting that the trainer did think that he was a well-handicapped horse in the run-up to last week. But those of, you know, everybody who's watched the race, Bobsworth really struggled to go the pace. They went a terrific pace in the Hennessy on that ground, which is all the more credit to Smad Place and the placed horses. And he couldn't lay up. But interestingly, he still stayed on in the race to finish 6th. Was still well beaten, but he was actually running on at the end. He's going to be an interesting horse in a veterans chase as well. But remember that pretty well most of these horses, because of the fact that they are veterans, in any veterans chase, most of the horses will have been dropped because of their previous run, because of their age, and they might not have been running particularly well. So he's going to be running against a lot of other horses in veterans chases whose mark has also been coming down. Well, who's to say they're not better handicapped than he is? Who's to say?
Final question on this. Would Bobsworth therefore have a hurdle rating of 150?
I think Bobsworth's hurdle rating now has been deleted because obviously he's running a chase, so because of that he's now...
He ran the hurdle 2 runs ago.
Yes, I know, but now he's running a chase. We delete his hurdle mark because he's now apparently...
But will you give him the same hurdle rating?
Well, we'd be reassessed.
Because if
they wanted him running in a handicap hurdle, then my hurdle handicappers would reassess him.
I'm just thinking, because he's won a hurdle race this season,
yeah.
The World Hurdle looks to be the most open race of all time. He's clearly not going to win the Gold Cup.
Well,
could he go down the world hurdle route?
Before we deleted his rating after he ran in the Hennessy, he was on 152. That would be nowhere near enough to win a world hurdle.
Ridiculously, Phil, we've gone through a whole segment without mentioning the horse that we were meant to do in this segment. We're going to go for a break. After this break, absolutely guaranteed as night follows day, Don Cossack.